Za NATO je oduvijek ključnu ulogu u održavanju svjetske bezbjednosti predstavljala kontrola naoružanja. Zbog toga u posljednjih 50 godina potpisano je više sporazuma koji se bave ovom tematikom. Prvi je potpisan davne 1968. u Ženevi između Sjedinjenih Američkih Država i tadašnjeg Sovjetskog saveza, a odnosi se na neširenje atomskog oružja. Međutim, jedan od istorijskih sporazuma koji je ikada potpisan na temu kontrole naoružanja je sporazum o nuklearnim projektilima srednjeg dometa. Ovaj sporazum je postignut između Sjedinjenih Država i tadašnjeg Sovjetskog saveza 1987. godine. Sporazum zvaničnog naziva Zajednički sveobuhvatni plan djelovanja potpisalo je 5 stalnih članica Savjeta bezbjednosti: Sjedinjene Države, Kina, Francuska, Rusija, Velika Britanija, Njemačka plus Evropska unija i Iran.
The issue is that Russia violated the INF Treaty, and all allies agree that Russia was in violation. They built a missile called the 9M729 in Russia. We call it the SSC-8. They built it, they tested it, they deployed it. Totally violated the treaty. The US tried, starting in late 2013, to engage with Russia, to encourage them to come back into compliance. Russia's refused. All allies have made statement after statement that it is in our security interest for Russia to come back into compliance with the treaty. They refused. The US finally announced that they were going to withdraw, because you can imagine, we couldn't have a situation where one party is completely respecting a treaty and the other side is violating that treaty, cheating on it, and saying that they're still in the treaty. At some point, consequences for actions have to be manifest. In this case, one-sided agreements that are not implemented by the other side can't hold. The US decision to withdraw, you could say, was meant to address a much bigger problem. Not only Russia's non-compliance, but let's face it, even if the US and Russia were to negotiate a new INF treaty, what about short-range nuclear forces, which are not covered by any treaty? What about China's growing arsenal of ground-launched missiles that would have fallen into this category? What about other countries like North Korea or Iran that are seeking missiles with these ranges? I think we have to take global missile threats more seriously, and I think one way to do that, we had a June Defense Ministerial where we had a number of taskings specifically targeted at how can we ensure the defense and deterrence of the alliance in the face of the new Russian system, the SSC-8, 9M729. Part of that, of course, is integrated air and missile defense, conventional posture, nuclear posture, but the part that I work on is the arms control part. What is our arms control response? And we are going to work together as an alliance to develop arms control approaches to these new missile threats. Also part of other taskings that we have on emerging and disruptive technologies. So new missiles that have never been covered, like hypersonic missiles. We're going to work together. We're going to come up with an alliance solution to make the world more secure, using arms control as one of our tools, as part of that big toolkit of deterrence, defense, and dialogue in order to make the world safer. And I think in that way, the US can engage, is engaging, will engage with NATO to try to make the world safer, even with the absence of the INF Treaty.
Međunarodni sporazum Otvoreno nebo predviđa dopuštanje izviđačkih letova nenaoružanih letjelica iznad teritorije zemalja potpisnica. Sporazum je stupio na snagu 2002. godine i do sada ga je potpisalo 35 zemalja. Razlog za prvobitno donošenje ovog sporazuma bio je da ojača povjerenje i omogući sprječavanje sukoba SAD-a i Rusije. Iako je svaka potpisnica pristala na posmatračke letove iznad cijele svoje teritorije, Rusija ne dozvoljava nadletanje nekih područja. Zbog toga su Sjedinjene Američke Države najavile da izlaze iz sporazuma.
Right. So the US on the 22nd of May announced its intention to withdraw from the treaty. That was sent to all treaty parties, and this is due to Russia's ongoing violations of the treaty. For years they have not been respecting fully their obligations of the treaty. So that means on Monday, on the 6th of July, the states parties will meet together in Vienna. This is mandated under the treaty. A conference of state parties to discuss the US withdrawal, where I'm sure the message will be for Russia to come back into compliance. It's the best way to preserve the benefits of the treaty. And then the timeline moving forward on that, there's a couple milestones. We have the review conference every 5 years. That comes up in October. And then the final withdrawal cannot happen sooner than the 22nd of November under the treaty. It has to be 6 months after. So we have time for Russia to come back into compliance. If Russia wants to preserve this treaty, they will come back into compliance. Allies are working together now in Vienna to try to bring Russia back into compliance. There's a small group. We're working with our partners, Sweden and Finland, to try to preserve the treaty. But again, the important thing isn't whether or not the U.S. withdraws or doesn't withdraw. The really important thing here is whether or not Russia complies with its international obligations. If Russia returns to full compliance, I think we will see a much stronger treaty. The question on membership, there are 35 treaty parties. Those include 27 of the NATO allies. Albania, North Macedonia, and Montenegro are not members of the treaty. I think if Russia does return to compliance, they might join the treaty as well. Other treaty parties are Belarus, Russia, Ukraine, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Georgia, Sweden, and Finland. Kyrgyzstan signed it, but has not ratified yet. So if the treaty survives, I think it'll be strengthened. I think more countries will join. The vision for the Open Skies Treaty is that all the members of the OSCE, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, can join. And I encourage them all to, because this treaty can provide unprecedented transparency and confidence among the Euro-Atlantic area countries. And I think it's in everyone's interest to do their best. But again, if Russia's going to violate the treaty, then the individual parties may really need to rethink their membership. And the U.S. is clearly doing its best to try to get Russia back into compliance with the treaty.
Sporazum o strateškom naoružanju između Rusije i SAD-a ili takozvani Novi start predviđa smanjenje broja raspoređenih nuklearnih bojnih glava na 1500, zatim smanjenje broja raspoređenih raketa na kopnu i podmornicama, kao i broj bombardera koji mogu nositi nuklearno oružje. I ovaj ugovor doveden je u pitanje.
The New START Treaty is, as I mentioned before, one of the most important pieces in the global disarmament architecture, an agreement between the U.S. and Russia that limits operationally deployed strategic nuclear weapons. What does that mean? It means the intercontinental ballistic missiles launched from silos or from trucks or from trains, the big ones that can go more than 5,500 kilometers, the strategic bombers that carry nuclear weapons that are launched from air-launched cruise missiles, and the sub-launch ballistic missiles that are carried on submarines and launched from them. Limits each side to 1,550. It has an annual exchange of information on how many of these systems they have and where they're deployed. And it has notifications of changes. And it has inspections to make sure that both sides have full confidence that they're respecting the agreements. Both sides have come under that limit of 1,550, a huge achievement and a huge milestone in arms control. But the treaty does end. It was negotiated in 2010. It ends on February 5th, 2021. I think that's right. So the sides have some tough decisions to make. Will they extend the treaty? The treaty allows for up to 5 years total if both sides agree to extend it. So the option is there. But the real question for me is that only answers part of the strategic picture. I think China as a global power has global responsibilities, and they could find a way. The United States has invited them to negotiate. I think they can find a way to negotiate. I think it's important. They're the only member of the NPT-defined P5 that doesn't have a limit on their strategic delivery systems or on their plutonium or HU production, not even a voluntary restraint. So I think there's a lot of room for them to engage here. You may know last week the United States and Russia met in Vienna. It was an excellent meeting. China was invited, but they didn't show up. That was a big disappointment. But the U.S. and Russia crucially agreed to continue talks. They've established 3 working groups to continue work. And I think that can be a really good platform for a New START extension if both sides can agree. Certainly, the treaty provides us with security, but we have to look forward. We have to say, even if the treaty was extended, it still isn't covering Chinese systems. We have to think about that. It doesn't cover all Russia and U.S. systems. We want to think about that. So we have a lot of homework to do. We'll see what happens. Allies will do everything we can to support the United States through this entire process, including through supporting the working groups as much as we can. I think it's excellent work. But ultimately, we have to find a way to get China into the game. And I think it's about time.
1. jula 1968. godine potpisan je ugovor o neširenju atomskog oružja. Prije 50 godina Sjedinjene Američke Države, Velika Britanija i Sovjetski savez su se ugovorom obavezali da će sprečavati širenje nuklearnog oružja. Cilj im je bio potpuno nuklearno razoružanje. Njemačka je 1975. pristupila tom ugovoru koji je u međuvremenu potpisalo više od 190 zemalja.
When the NPT was negotiated, when it was being negotiated in Geneva in 1968, 1967, 1966, there was a real fear because a number of countries all around the world had nuclear weapons programs. And when you think of every crisis in every corner of the world being a nuclear crisis, it was a terrifying prospect. They negotiated the treaty originally to stop the spread of nuclear weapons, and on that basis of stopping the spread of nuclear weapons, to allow and provide monitoring for nuclear cooperation. So every country that signed the treaty committed to support nuclear disarmament and general and complete disarmament, and on that basis to cooperate on nuclear power. So nuclear cooperation for the peaceful uses of nuclear energy, for the pursuit of all kinds of additional technologies like irradiation of fruit or elimination of pests or salinization of water. All this cooperation happens because the NPT treaty provides us with the legal framework and the context for cooperation. It's been extraordinary. If you were to tell someone in 1968 that the future did not have 20 or 25 nuclear states, and they saw the future as 1970 or 1975, they would have said this is an amazing achievement. In 1985, it was extended indefinitely, and that was a huge deal. And now we have this extraordinary treaty that is making us all safer every day. Allies 100% agree that this treaty is vital. On the 5th of March, NATO issued its first standalone statement in support of the NPT. We always supported the NPT, it's in all of our communiques, but this was a standalone statement on the 50th anniversary valuing the treaty about how allies remain strongly committed to full implementation, allies have always adhered to their obligations, and allies support the ultimate goal of a world free of nuclear weapons in full accordance with the provisions of the NPT. So I can't think of a more valuable tool for global cooperation, for global peace. There's few treaties in history that have been more successful. And so the 50th anniversary this year, we were supposed to have the NPT review conference in New York in March, but obviously the COVID crisis postponed it. We're going to have it now in January of next year. This is a vital opportunity for us to strengthen the treaty and to ensure its benefits continue to be felt by all parties, especially the security benefits. And that requires all states, not just the nuclear weapon states, of working together to ensure peace, to try to head off arms races. All states have contributions to make here. That way, safeguards can be strengthened, peaceful uses of nuclear energy can be shared, and the world can be a better place. It's an extraordinary achievement.